Yeah.
So, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I, Deepika Tuteja, founder architect of Innov, welcome you all to this interesting discussion on art and architecture. Art, as we all know, is a very individual expression, and it is something which is not learnt. It just comes from within, and it comes in each and every individual. The expression could be different. For example, some may express their creativity through music composition, through singing, through food, through dress designing. But in today's concept, some visual forms could be paintings, murals, sculptures, and of course, on a larger scale, architecture. Architecture is a very small part of art, but it's a very important part. And as architects, we generally try to include both art inside the buildings or art as form of murals, paintings outside the building also. And also as architecture is created as a form of art, and it has we all know it is there's a very thin line that divides art and architecture. Architecture is not a pure form, as in it's not like a sculpture, but it can certainly inspire and make an emotional impact. It needs to form a definite connect with the users. Architecture, that's how it is, because architecture, we have users using the space. So whether that comes through visuals or through scales, it has to have that emotional connect. And sometimes art plays that important role in creating belongingness or familiarity, as in regional familiarity also, because in recent times we see how the wall art is transforming the elevations and the whole aura of outdoor spaces. So art can definitely leave an impression and make a space very awe-inspiring. And we all have, as architects, have read in its history of architecture that how buildings and spaces have been transformed by the way in which art was used within them, that created spaces which were beautiful and sometimes spiritually uplifting also. That actually that depends on how the architect perceives, based on the client's brief and how he translates it into a building. So getting the balance right is also an art in itself. Sometimes it can turn a nicely designed building into an eyesore. The building designer has to have that skill and that creative talent to envisage what the end result will be and how it will be interpreted by the people who see it. But surely these skills are sometimes taught through theory of design, where we all learn scale, harmony, balance, how to put it right, whether it's a piece of art, sculpture, or a building. So, in this webinar today, we will examine the interrelation between art and architecture through the works by the architects on the panel. And we have very interesting panel. We have a father-son duo from Delhi, leading architects in present times, and we have a young architect from Nigeria. So we'll be seeing works across the continents from two countries very rich in art and culture. India has its own artwork from thousands of years, so we will see how it has been incorporated in the building design to create an impact in interiors or the building form. And similarly, Nigeria is a art and culture rich country. So we'll see some works from Nigeria as well. So introducing the first panelist, we have with us a very senior and a well-known architect from Delhi, whom I would like to invite first to set the ball rolling, who actually doesn't need any introduction. And I'm sure the audience is looking forward to hearing to each one of the panelists. Professor Charanjit Singh Shah, you're welcome, sir. Professor Shah is an architect, planner, and infrastructure expert with 5 decades of practice. He adorns many hats besides being a practicing architect and a planner. He's also an author, educationist, teacher, art and architecture critique. He's the author of many books, And his recently published book is Redefining Indian Sustainable Smart Cities. He has also been facilitated with various awards such as the CBR Lifetime Achievement Award, National Udyog Award, Best Architect of the Year Award, and Jewel of Punjab, amongst many others. He has spearheaded some landmark sustainable projects in India, including Chennai Airport, Raipur Airport, Goa, Vadodara. So, therefore, he's called the Airport King. Another side of him that not many may know is his affiliation to combining two aspects in his design, nature and spirituality. So, over to you, Professor Shah. With your experience and great works, please enlighten everyone about your thoughts on how art is a very relevant part of architecture, and in your projects, how these have been combined. Over to you.
Thank you, Deepika ji, for such a beautiful introduction. I would say, humbly accepted from your such a vision personality, and I really look forward many more things to be interacted together. Today's topic is actually, it's like, I would say it's like soul in architecture. Architecture perhaps may not be misunderstood that it's a small part of the whole, process. But I think that we find the architect, and I take an architect as a mini god. God created this universe, and where does the God lives? He lives within his own creation. It is like the creator and the creation. Similarly, I presume an architect to be the creator of his visioned build form, or you can say both together. And if he wishes to be the great successful architect, I think that he would like to live within his own creation, and that perhaps is the adoration with the type of things which we develop. So I take, sometimes we say what is in architecture is like mother of all arts, but now perhaps looking into the centuries, or the maybe 2000 years of great heritage and various eras of civilization, I take this, it is now no more only to be called as mother of all arts, but it is like, I say, it is father of all sciences, technology, and it has perhaps to be seen and in terms of also applied sciences. So today it is holistic architecture. Perhaps that has to be seen, not that I create something in isolation, which I say, oh, it's an art form, but it's like managing together in terms of all architecture, art, sculptures, landscape, inside, outside spaces, along with the technological advancement. That is what we call as holistic architecture. And today's topic is very interesting to me. And I would just start looking into, can you put the slides on, please? I'll just put my presentation on. And next. This is how the very simplistic humanistic lifestyle, this is also we call architecture. Sitting below a tree, meditating, reciting, I'm absolutely with the nature. This perhaps, if also in India, we were about 100 years back, and I used to feel so great. So great, sitting below this. And then what happens? The technology plays a very, very very vital role. And we said, oh, I do not, this is pressure. I'm not comfortable. I want some more temperature. I want to be cooler. So we produce a cooler. And then what happens? And then, oh, the last 50 odd years, 60 odd years in India, probably, we were into the air condition. And we started looking at creating our spaces which are not exactly with the nature, but we wanted to create our own controlled nature, and we put it air conditioner, which is maybe a central air conditioner or a unit air conditioner. And then from there, now today we talk in Delhi as PM 2.5, PM 10 rising to 400, and I am a passive smoker, and the dust element is so high that I have started putting an air purifier. And now with COVID, I need to have an oxygen cylinder and a mask on. Is this what the future is all about? Is this the art and architecture perhaps which we are visualizing and we are going through? So this is something which relates to how to create an architecture where I say a built form is not a mass of brick and concrete, but as a living organism which breathes, which is embodied with nature. I say, oh, I am with nature. I am sitting with nature, eating with nature, drinking nature, and perhaps I engulf myself with nature and am away from the cosmetic architecture of today, and perhaps the organism of architecture plays an important role. So that is what needs to be seen. Can I just move on? Yeah, we will learn from a great banyan tree where I see all the structure stability component, and this have 250-year banyan tree, old tree in Calcutta, which still exists in about 2-4 acres of land, a single tree. And that is what, and you just see the sustainability. Where is this not the architecture where I have just created with God's creation? I'm trying to create an architecture where it can become an auditorium for about 1,000 people sitting below this. So this is what we need to see, how we practically blend architecture with nature. And sometimes we create some building and we create positive and negative spaces, and anything what we create and left out spaces, the negative spaces, we just say, oh, this is landscape. But we need to see how various things put together in form, function, aesthetics, organism, cosmetism, sustainability. All these are some of the things which needs to be interwoven, and how that can be done, that's very, very important. I'll just try to take you through various projects, how you vision out a project, how you see the art and architecture put together, and you say, yes, this is something which is touching my soul. And that is what we call a soul in architecture. And once I say, oh, it touches my soul, it means that architecture is my own baby. And it's like anything what I do, it's like in my motherhood, I play, I design, I understand, I vision out. And in my motherhood, the building is born, and as a mother, I take precautions. And then the baby borns, and I start adoring the baby. And that baby is my own baby. And I love it. I said, oh, come on, hug me out. And I cannot live without you. It's that I'm putting my soul, my heart and soul into it. That is what somebody says, that in case you are able to do body, mind, and intellect put together, that is meditating, vibrating, transformating. And that transformation is called spirituality in architecture, purity in architecture, and universalism into architecture. Now, I think I'll just show you a small video, and then we'll come to Chennai Airport, the complex dynamism, which we call as, architecture, art and architecture growing from the engineering novelty. So I'll just show this video, and then we'll again come to the presentation. This is basically on various airports where we see how the connect, the belongingness with the place, people, the culture, the heritage, and other things are put together into architecture. And क्यों नहीं आ रहा? कोई नहीं, इसको देख ले, वो छोड़ दे, इसको आने दे। वीडियो लगा, थोड़ा थोड़ा आगे करते हैं।
वीडियो ब्लैंक आ रहा है, वीडियो ब्लैंक आ रहा है सर, गुरप्रीत सर की स्क्रीन पे वीडियो ब्लैंक आ रहा है।
देख कर लेंगे।
नहीं, आपका शेयर हो रहा है, सर में ब्लैंक आ रहा है, तो सर बोले स्किप द वीडियो एंड गो होता है, वीडियो छोड़ के आगे प्रेजेंटेशन
दिखने रहा,
सर बोले स्किप द वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन।
can you see the video?
नहीं सर, दिख नहीं रही।
अच्छा अच्छा, ओके, एक मिनट
शेयर हो रही।
एक मिनट रोको इसको। हेलो, you can't see the video?
No, we cannot.
Oh my God. अच्छा, okay, I'll again check it out, please. दोबारा चलो। Can you see this?
No.
No, no, no.
So I think you can continue with the presentation then.
Okay, okay. छोड़ दूं? चलो दोबारा present. Even audio is not there?
Audio is there, so you can continue with the presentation. We can't
Okay,
see the video.
Okay, okay, then I think I'll do that. So anyway, you know, I just wanted to show the video how the expressions are there, but basically, let's see that how we create the form and how to see that the form complements a function. You know, sometimes somebody says form comes first or the function comes first. You know, is the form important or the function important? That has to be next one. That has to be seen. So So now I'm just coming to Chennai Airport. When we're designing this, as an architect, you always see, yes, it's something which has to be very dynamic and iconic, and it has to be some symbolism has to be there. And we talk about everything put together. And here, what we tried, I said, okay, because we're making an airport terminal, and let's see that it is like wings of the bird. So we started looking at the shape that, okay, the wings of the bird. How do you create that? And this is the sort of evolution of form from the wings of the bird to the functionality. Then you complement, supplement each other, starting playing with both things together. This is how we sketch out wings, then taking it further like this. Now, this is how the transformation of wings have been transformed into an architecture, which is like an H-shaped building, which is absolutely sustainable as well. So now how you process out all this put together and create this as a dynamism, complexity of architecture in large mega project, but never the mind, they have to be sustainable, where I see that I maximize the daylight, minimizing the heat gain in the hot and dry climate, and I see that I get north glare-free light, shaded south light, and protect my building from west heated or glared sun. So this is how the dynamism of the various technology structure plays. And this is perhaps an art form, if you see the dynamism of the art form in steel, which has been created here. Even the roof you see is all exposed and no false ceiling is there. It's the virginity of material put into the art effect, into various elements. And we say, yes, this is art, architecture, technology, putting together as holistic architecture. So this is how I just say that creating a global facility and creating these public spaces with technological advancement, creating visual panoramic delight, and also looking into the commercial and financial feasibility, all this also interwoven into sustainability. And I do not call these mega projects as energy guzzlers. So all these things come together, a large project of 2,500 crores, and creating an international facility on the left-hand side, on the right, international domestic terminal, then the metro station, interconnectivity, like creating a transport hub, which is called an intermodal hub of food transports. And this is how the various other elements of architecture into art form, we created these vertical gardens, stainless steel vertical gardens, where at every 3 meters, we have troughs, steel troughs, where we put the, good soil, and then I can go up, and Mali can go, gardener can go and cut and chop all this as vertical greens. And as you see behind is a glass tube, which is the arrival tube. When I come to this airport, I see all this green, and it's so beautifully done that I say, oh, I adore it. So this is how you create that sort of art and architecture put together, which becomes a natural phenomena near to the green spaces. This is the glass tube, from when I arrive in, and on the right-hand side, and the left-hand side are those vertical gardens. So every aspect of architecture needs to reflect into an art form. This is how I see the engineering, the structure elements, the forms, like a V column. We wanted to have V RCC column here in the flyover. We converted the same vocabulary into the terminal building, creating V columns in steel. And that is how the composite dialogue of evolution of process of form through the various structure elements into the architecture vocabulary. So all these are like, now you see this wheel 4-legged V columns, then I put a tube inside, and this becomes a layering architecture. You know, when you constrain a space, one flyover, below that I have a connectivity. It's like connector glass tube from international to domestic terminal, which are about 1.2 meters apart. Then also I connected with my metro station. So these are, you see this, how the construction was done, how every piece of architecture is a composition of art, which speaks of its ability to translate into architecture. Now you see the one of the largest cantilever, 24 meters, 80 feet in any of the airport in the world. And then you have a small canopy below, which gives me shelter from sun and rain. All these are composite dialogue again, and how the various architectural elements or even the service elements become the artifact. You see the shade, you see the other things put together, lighting. The architecture is also, in terms of art, it's also creating some sort of a visual. So art is not subjected to a form, but it is subjected to various other things like all 5 senses. So 5 senses, creating an aspired 5 senses is what is the art. Art is not a product, but art is like a visual where I can see it from my eyes, I can sound it from my ears, I can even taste it. All these are certain fundamental things. And when I say that the architecture smells out with the 5 senses, that is the purity. And then when it senses with five of my senses, then it is soul in architecture. So similarly, when we did Raipur Airport, it is all green. You see, it's a dynamism of steel structure. With outside, you see all areas are totally green. And this is what you respect the form into an artifact. By itself, when you go to Raipur, the terminal itself is a sculpture. And when you see this as a sculpture, you say, oh, it's an art product. And when you see the food court outside, it is so much shaped and engulfed into the nature, it becomes part and parcel of the complete, airport terminal. So this is how it looks at night shot. This is the site plan. It's all composition of various things put together, where I say that we're creating every piece into an architecture and art, aspired, tree column, all this, how the evolution of every structured element is into the art form, layering. You see the leaves, you see the central domical eye, and this is all inspired architecture through the various art forms. And that is one, when I put all these art forms put together, it becomes a composite dialogue, and then it becomes art and architecture put together. This is how the roofing is there, and this is shaping art into architecture. This is how the whole thing is realized, the dynamism of engineering, which transform into a complexity of architecture. This is how it looks from inside. You can see the tree column, you see all these things put together. See inside, when I transform my spaces with the local art, the local flavor, the water bodies, the landscape, and the sculptures, the Bastar art, the local Bastar art predominantly has been put there. And this is how we create something which has a belongingness to a place and the people. And I proudly say, I belong to Chhattisgarh, and Raipur is Chhattisgarh's capital. And this is my airport, because this is my art. This is my Bastar art from the Chhattisgarh state. This creates emotions, sentiments, your behavior response to the architecture. Perhaps that is what you say this from outside. If your car is parked on the green hard surface, on the grass, and there is no radiating heat in the terminal building, conduction, radiation, and convection, this is how the conservation of energy plays a very vital role in creating art and architecture. This is outside again. And this is again another airport. I'm touching all these large projects, and Gurpreet, the principal architect of Creative Group, and of course my son, he will showcase you various other projects where there is more emotions of that nature into very niche, projects. This is Agartala. We analyze the complete green landscape, the bamboos, the local sculpture, and Unnakuti Hill art. All this is something we studied, and how we reflect upon these art forms to be part of architecture, the built space. And I proudly say, yes, here there are emotions of the state. And this is what we created at Agartala, another airport, very simplistic dynamism. And you see outside, it's like growing a tree into a bamboo-like structure, a very abstract, and creating that sort of an art, architecture, sculpture put together in integrating form and spaces. So this is how you see this, and see the interior. You see all this local flavors are there. The Unnakuti Hill art, which has been put here. You see all these are displayed on the panels in the airport, and this is how, even in the check-in counters, and this is how the VIP lounges would have the local flavor. And you see this, the bamboo, the glass vessels which have the bamboo inside. It's like depiction of the various local flavor into the architecture, which speaks of the place and the people there itself. You see this is the practically now final stage of the work, and all this has been executed. You can see this, you can see the ticketing and everything happening here. And this is the art into architecture. It's not in isolation, but into integration, making that as part of the holistic architecture of the project. So again, now I will take you Bhubaneswar. You're taking lead from the various temple architecture, the twin city of Bhubaneswar and Puri, and I talk about the various motifs of temple architecture, the Konark wheels and other things put together here, the corbelled ways and other motifs together, and mostly the Jagannath Yatra. The symbolism of pulling the Rath is what is important at I would say Puri. And now look at this and look at this. So this is what we transformed, that architecture into art and architecture put together. This is the new terminal building, which has all put together, the Konark wheel to various temple motive architecture, everything put together here. And this looks like a Jagannath chariot. I am pulling the chariot, and it's like I have reached. And when I reached at Bhubaneswar airport, I have reached at Puri, and I think I am part of the Jagannath Puri's chariot, and I'm pulling it. My emotions, my sentiments are raised to such a level that I start worshipping, really about Jagannath Puri. Jagannath, Bhagwan Jagannath. So these are certain emotions. How do you create those sort of emotions into your architecture, where you see soul in architecture? And this is how all these things which you see upon here are the features which have been developed into the various functionalities, creating that form which is complementing with the functionality of the airport. This is the inside, all glass pan structure with pre-stressed concrete, and we see all this put together, again, various motifs and other things. And this is how the Jagannath symbolism has been at the back of the ticket counter. So this was Bhubaneswar. Now we are very fortunate that we are doing another airport, which is Varanasi Airport. Again, an airport which is gateway to Hindu architecture, temple architecture, all ghats, Ganges River, and then I have silk sarees, I have beautiful carpets, all that, whatever is there as a local flavor at Varanasi, we need to understand all this. The flow of river Ganges you know, the fluidness of the river Ganges has to be expressed into the architecture of the terminal building. So this is how the fluid waves of the Ganges have been put into the exterior, giving a sort of a very dynamism, fluidness, endless, infinite shape of a terminal building, which can have the modulation on both the sides as well. So this is how you see the interior, you see the boat like false ceiling and the Sanskrit shlokas written in that boat effect, which give me a connect between the gateway to the, I would say, the great Hindu architecture, and I create this here. I create the silk sari pattern in my false ceiling. I create the carpet pattern in this, in the false ceiling and other places, and that is how you see these bells as you know, lighting, you know, and these are certain depictions of various elements to showcase the relevance of the city, the people, their civilization, and the culture put together. So this is how, again, you see this, the interior of the Varanasi. I touched upon this. Now I touched upon another work which talks about is practically art into an industrial project. Industrial project, sometimes you just see they are just plain roof or a typical, you know, hangar-like roof. But here we played with multiple walls at multiple levels and all in exposed concrete. Then we have, you know, glass blocks in these the sky and skylights, and we get natural light into a project of industrial project. So these are tempting projects where we wish that we create something which has that sort of a thing, you know. Now, like this Congo Engineering College, again, a large auditorium with 5,000 people, and this is what, like from Goddard, you know, Goddard, a bird inspired from Goddard, we're taking this and created this vastness of a large convention multi-purpose hall with 5,000 people here, and this has been done here. You see this, you know, how magnificent is the scale of this auditorium. It has a basketball court with 4 badminton court inside and a capacity of 5,000. It's like a global facility. You know, I'll touch upon Vadodara Airport, again, a very sustainable airport. You know, see this on the left-hand side, you see the food court. This is the terminal building, absolutely straight, dynamic shape, where you see this is my west side. So west side is totally blocked with no glazing, so no heat is going inside, and I have the insulated wall, which is like an ACC block or double skin roofing system. So this is how the evolution of various things into art form, the dynamism of the shape is, you know, inspired shape, which we need to see and put it into a reality. So this is how the food court works. And this is one of the very interesting project on the memorial for late Shri Gopinath Munde in Aurangabad. And this is how, again, you see, this is the large, it's like an auditorium. And here's the Gopinath Munde statue on the left-hand side. You see all this is part of the museum, sunken museum, in the landscape. So people come here, sit together, see the dynamism of art in architecture. You know, that is how the symbolizing various things put together. And this is how you see the various trends of architecture developing this whole complex. This is under construction. See this. This is my auditorium, how the shape of the auditorium by itself speaks of the great architecture. So now I'm just concluding my presentation here. Let's see that whatever we do, we learn from nature, and nature is life. Life is nature. And I think, and nature is a byproduct of the creation of the God, and God lives within his creation, and creation is nothing but nature. Once I respond to nature, love nature, eat nature, sit with nature, I am becoming romantic. That is the romanticism of architecture, which belongs to nature, and from nature, the art form comes, and from art, I got originated to architecture, and that is holistic architecture. So thank you, Deepika ji. I think I finished my presentation here, and now I hand over to you.
Thank you so much. And It's very inspiring to look at the whole architecture you have created. It is actually right for the context today as art and architecture. So if you can stop the share.
Yeah, I'm stopped.
In the end, I always have this photograph of जो मर्जी topic पे बात करा, sustainability, steel structure, ये this art in architecture. जो last photo will be ना कि trees और greens के आगे ना he's standing like this, and then he always there. Everything.
So that was really inspiring, Professor Shah, and wonderful presentation. I'm sure it's going to set an example.
Now you will say little, and now you will say I am getting the romantic. But the romanticism is creation.
I think somebody has to mute.
Are you crazy?
So we have with us a young architect from Nigeria, Tosin Oshinogo.
Just a minute.
Stop it now. You guys are like that.
So Tosin is a registered architect in Federal Republic of Nigeria and a member of the Royal Institute of the British Architects. She has been principal architect at CM Design Atelier, consultancy based in Lagos.
Sabina ji, please mute yourself.
I think you have to mute yourselves.
और साक्षी तब तक जा चुकी साक्षी हमारे साथ ही थी और साक्षी कैसे आई थी वो अपने पाई थी ओके तो वो
somebody is not
बीच में सिलेक्ट हो गई मतलब तुम आई थी मतलब तुम 5% जब तुमने सब उसको समझा दिया तो फिर उसको समझ आ गया कि भैया लाइफ में इतनी बड़ी कचौड़ी पड़ी हुई है
I think it is from Sabina ji.
Sabina?
Sabina ji, please mute.
Yeah, so starting again with Tosin's introduction. She's an architect in Federal Republic of Nigeria and a member of the Royal Institute of the British Architects. She has been principal architect at CM Design Atelier, design consultancy practice based in Lagos since 2012. Tosin is an award-winning amateur photographer and has worked in a professional capacity on public art design installation in Lagos. Her written work includes
to understand like we always make plans according to you, your comfort.
I don't know who's not muted.
And your friend to Sabina देखना पड़ता है ना
Sabina, please.
What is the relation between Ishani and her?
So her written work includes an article on the reclamation.
You can actually mute her.
Sorry?
Okay. No,
Shall I?
No, it's
okay.
good. I was trying to say you could actually mute everyone. But it's fine. It's fine. You can continue. I apologize.
Okay. Okay. Tosin enjoys collaboration projects with other creatives. For example, the Angles and the Muse Artist Foundation done with acclaimed Nigerian artist Victor Ehikamenor. I hope I pronounced it correctly. The process was documented by Netflix's Amazing Interiors episode 10 and was the only African project filmed for the series, which aired in June 2018. To begin with, Tosin, I just want to say that some countries regard sculpture, painting, media, art, and of course, architecture as being of the highest cultural importance and supported as an essential part of the country's branding, as you've seen in Professor Shah's works. So about Nigeria, art and architecture and culture are intertwined into a single system that describes the way of life in Nigeria. Artistic heritage is one of the interesting features that distinguishes Nigeria as one of the culturally inclined countries in Africa. So will you take us all through a journey of your works that encompass art as form of architecture? Over to you, Tosin.
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel presentation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to meet you all. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to take you through just a few things. Oh gosh. And just really to give you an idea of who I am, how I've come about to be in this space, and why I enjoy it so much. So it's really going to be a bit of my history, and then obviously the history of the practice. So I attended the Architecture Association. I finished in 2007. This is me in the middle of the group. Also very conscious that it was an international school, or is an international school. I was a lot of different people. And how do you carve a niche and find yourself as a designer, not only in the context of where you practice, but in a global world? So this is our office in Lagos. I'm very particular about design. And I think design is also encompassing of art. And how do you kind of tie this into the reality of practice in general? This is me on site. This is one of our biggest projects, Maryland Mall, which is on Ikorodu Road in Lagos, Nigeria. My style of architecture is quite minimal. It's very conscious about using color and form. This building was finished in 2016. It's fondly known as the Big Black Box. It had, at the time, the longest LED screen on a building in West Africa. It's about 80 meters long. It was very striking for its day. It has no windows on the outside, but we have no problem with light because we have two skylights that pull light through the building completely. The intent originally of the building being a dark color was so that it would become a backdrop for all the brand signage that would go on the front at night. So the building actually has two very strong contrasting points. During the day, it has a strong, imposing, almost masculine feel, and at night it almost feels like it floats when you have a big concentration on the brand signage. This is an image of the interior, and this is an image from the top floor looking down through the atriums where the skylight pulls light down the building. I'm very particular about creating opportunities as well for artists. We did this project, the lighting feature in this building is done by a British Nigerian designer, Jade Folawiyo. And she's very strongly known within the design field in the UK. She had, I think, an artist residency at the Design Museum, and her exhibition was viewed by the Queen, which was quite nice. So as an architect, again, pulling culture is very important, and how this manifests shows in different ways. This is the beach house we finished in 2018. But the pattern of the stencil that's been used on the building is based on a traditional tie and dye principle in West Africa, batik. And the actual pattern on this building is symbolic of what is known within tie and dye, the patterning for a guinea fowl. And the significance of the guinea fowl, it's a symbol that almost, it's like a blessing that says, givers will never lack. So most people, most Yoruba people in Nigeria, if they see this pattern, they know what the meaning is. And so we use that as a backdrop for this building. My style, or our architectural style as an office, is very contemporary, but we do feel that in the context of how we've come about to exist in our urbanism in Africa, it's very important to be able to pull in elements of culture, but always consciously in a very contemporary way. Use of materials that are local. I'm very big on using woods, natural hues that always adds to the softness, but is also more appropriate for the actual environment where things are being located. This is another house that we've done. Now this, I guess, is probably more contemporary than anything, but always drawing on the elements or the environment and creating beautiful pause moments within the architecture. Spaces that are comfortable to sit in, spaces that people can appreciate, that in the environment that we live in, that you can still design beautiful, you can design beautiful buildings that are appropriately scaled and appropriate for the environment and comfortable spaces to live in. this piece on the wall. Now, this was actually commissioned by the owner. It's a really beautiful, just circular pattern, which is done with a local material called it's like raffia. I don't know if you guys have that in India. They use it for baskets. But simple elements of being able to, as an architect, create pause points that other art pieces can then start to occupy as well. So you create that backdrop, you create that canvas for other people to be able to also create beautiful pieces. This is the building that we did in Victoria Island. Now, this was a refurbishment building, but again, also conscious about recycling. This company, they actually, they're in the process of providing alternative power in non-urban areas in Nigeria, and they tend to have a lot of these left off. These ones are actually not functional, but it was a really good opportunity to create an interesting facade, which also sells the quality of what they do as a company. And then this was in the early days, just after refurbishment, we were going to have the plants growing up the mesh, which is also signifying the importance of being green. The first beach house that I mentioned here is actually fully solar. There's a series of 46 solar panels that sit on the building now. So very conscious as well of always providing alternative energy solutions. So this is the interior of that office. Again, playing with local materials. I love wood. Wood shows up a lot in our work. This is a contemporary block of flats, actually. So again, always thinking about the end user. I particularly have an issue with flats because sometimes you get that monotony of copy paste every single floor. And I think when people are able to feel ownership of a property, usually because of its scale, it's easier to feel you own this space. So we decided to do these as 4, appearing to have the illusion of 4 terrace houses, but to help to build this idea of personalized ownership. This is an interesting project. This one is actually a refurbishment of an old colonial building. So this would have probably been built in the 1930s in what would have been the British Reserved area in Lagos. And we were able to take this, put a slight contemporary twist on it, but still keep it true to its heritage. So we're not completely changing it, we're just upgrading it slightly. We changed the staircase from a wooden stairs to steel and just created an interesting space. This is recently completed. Now, these are actually terrace houses that we've done in Lagos, in Onuru. 5 terrace houses where we've got some interesting cantilevers creating shade. Again, always thinking about the environment. You need shade for tropical areas so you can have cross ventilation in and out. And then in this property, we also were able to incorporate a beautiful skylight, which is within each unit. This was a competition entry that we did for a Baha'i temple in Kinshasa in Congo. And we had to learn about the Baha'i faith, which I had never heard of before. But they create a dwelling space, a temple space without any focal point. There's no pulpit as you would have in church. And the symbol at the top, which is important to when all this skylight with the iconography writing, and it's really supposed to be creating a pause point for people to go in and contemplate. They don't actually hold services as such in them. And I would like to share with you, I do a lot more than just pure architecture. I'm very big on culture in general and art. And I have a line of furniture which we produce in Nigeria called Ile Ila, which is about we upholster contemporary style furniture using local Ashoke and Adire fabrics, which are from the Yoruba people in southwestern Nigeria. And it's really an opportunity to celebrate culture in a very contemporary way. The line has done very well. It's had a lot of international exposure, and we've exported to the UK, we've exported to Dubai, we've exported to the US. Also, in my interest in furniture in particular, we had this table designed in, I think, 2019. This is called Iro, and it's made from steel plates. Now, this was actually made in Italy, but the bar stools were made by a Nigerian artist, Oluwamoda, who is world renowned for doing steel work. And it was more like a collaboration between the two of us, where we have this beautiful contrasting, but also complementing pieces. So more of the Ilela furniture. And like I said, we were very fortunate to have Macron in Nigeria in 2017. And he had a meeting with the very famous poet and Nobel laureate, Sir Wole Soyinka. And I have this beautiful image of both of them sat on our chairs. So that was really, really exciting. As I said, the line has done very well. We were in El Decor for International Women's Day in March. It's also been shown in Harper's Bazaar, Middle East, and quite a few other magazines. It's also been in Grazia. So also now coming back to this idea of art, I'm also a firm believer in collaboration and the strength of collaboration in developing yourself as a designer, but also being able to push the boundaries of the work that can be produced. This was done with Victor Hekamone. This is on Netflix for Amazing Interiors episode 10, and it's called The House of Doodles. And we did a collaboration where we were refurbishing or retrofitting an existing space into a multidisciplinary space that would also be able to be used as an Airbnb. And this is a clip from an extract from that series. I also was instrumental in, I was one of the co-curators of the Lagos Biennale in 2019, October, where we put on an international contemporary art exhibition. We had artists from, I think, 43 countries who came to present their work, all based on the theme, how to build a lagoon from a bottle of wine. This image shows my two co-curators, Oyinda and Antoine. And this gentleman was one of the people that helped us to put together the exhibition in terms of manning the space. This is, and this is in a very old building in Lagos, which was gifted to Nigeria by the British in 1960s. It's called Independence House. It was burned down in 1993. We were able to clean it up, and we occupied 4 floors of the space for the exhibition. And these are some of the extracts from that. So again, you know, this beautiful notion of art being able to populate space through architecture. I've been very fortunate just to recently have completed a project for Lexus, which was in partnership with a lady called Krista Amwa, who's from Ghana. And we have a conceptual design that we've produced for Lexus, which I would really like to share with you. I'm going to just, if it's okay, I'm going to quickly play a video.
Sure.
Oh, no, it's not this one. Oops. Sorry, hold on. This is the wrong video. Give me a minute. Oh, no, I don't have it here. Wait, hold on. Oops.
There's no sound.
Oh, there's no sound? Hold on. To work. Can you hear it? An environment where you can just explore the possibilities.
Now I can. Now we can hear.
A comfortable environment where you can just explore the possibilities and opportunities and really push this idea of creativity is very powerful. And then we've given a really detailed what informed the Lexus design process and craftsmanship. And one thing that stood out for me was the detailing in the grills of this car.
to take bird's eye scans of villages across this continent, there are different forms of African fractals being practiced even now that have been practiced for centuries and so on. And I just saw immediate correlations with the Lexus grills on the car. And that inspired some of the design elements that you will see in the details of the leather etching. You know, innovation is born out of necessity. That's what Lexus has permitted us to do. For any designer, this is beyond a dream. As a designer, you don't even dream of experiences like this. It's so big. When Tosin approached me to collaborate together, I jumped at the chance.
So I met Kristen through another designer, Damola Rufai.
He introduced me to her work and I loved what she was doing. I loved the energy that she brought to her work.
She has done a lot of things within the product design or the design space. She's a textile designer. My passion for arts and design comes predominantly from my culture. I'm a Yoruba girl who is Nigerian and I live in Lagos. And I grew up in the 90s where it wasn't seen as a great thing to celebrate who I was or who we were. There was a big emphasis on external cultures that were coming in.
So I always say that, you know, do not be fooled by my accent, and I always describe myself as living a life of duality. So my own personal design ethos is led by the idea of combining beautiful design with meaningful design.
Architecturally, I love this idea of materiality and tectonics. Like I mentioned, it plays very strongly in my work, how lighting shines on an object and what that can mean within internal space.
Definitely I'm big on colour. I think when people see my work, they see a play on colour, they see a play on texture, they see a play on symbolism in an abstract way, in a way that transcends cultures. I think that Lexus's ethos of omotenashi, human-centeredness, and takumi, you know, it very much runs in parallel with who I am as a person, who I am as a designer, and also runs very much in parallel with African design.
I think design in Africa now is going through a cultural renaissance. There is a big emphasis on contemporary design, but also using traditional materials.
Traditional and modern design techniques work best when you understand the materials and their scope, and then allow them to do what they do well, and then fuse them together, as opposed to trying to make an old material do something that a new material can do, and vice versa. I think that this collection will show a beautiful harmony of old and new, tradition and artisanship with technology, which speaks to the Lexus brand.
The local people and environment have immensely influenced how we've approached the output of this project. We've used technology from the vernacular, from the historic, in terms of the casting system used for the Benin bronzes.
Through Tosin's architectural knowledge, we looked at aspects of 3D modeling and how understood in that way. And I also think it speaks to our modern times in the world that we live in, where at the crossroads, if you like, of the old world and the new world. And so it just seemed very natural to do that. And in doing so, we've been able to bring a lot of people in this journey with us.
But it's not uncommon to know that infrastructure-wise, Africa is not as advanced as the rest of the world. And originally, when we got this project, I was a little concerned about how we'll be able to execute the pieces. And so far, it's been an eye-opener that there's actually a lot more here than I even realized.
I think it's very easy to assume that certain technologies do not exist or are not practiced here on the continent. So to have discovered a laser cutter based here in Lagos was so refreshing. And somebody who has an engineering background who could really educate us on the science of the process to allow us to push the boundaries has been a really exciting experience.
One thing about soft technology is it's available to everyone. And as long as you can think and you can adapt yourself, you know, you're able to use those. So that's been great. In terms of physicality, in terms of the physical infrastructure, that also I've been pleasantly surprised because we're able to find people here who can do 3D printing. We've also worked greatly with a modeler who's done the mannequin and we used to display the pieces. We're mixing and matching, but the bulk of the work is actually being done here, of course.
There are so many different elements to our design. We have 4 designs with 8 different iterations, and it involved bringing lots of different people in on the journey to share their craftsmanship and expertise.
For this particular project, we started off with a series of sketches. What do we think these masks should look like? We always worked from the idea of precedence, what to find as an initial reference point. A series of first sketches, which we then use to communicate with the 3D modelers who have produced the actual forms. From that, we then moved to 3D printing so we can have a physical object that we can actually then human test and make sure one is comfortable, 2 the ergonomics are correct. And then from that, we are then producing final finishes where we take those 3D prints and then we create molds from them to then produce the final finishes. Some are going to be produced from brass and bronze with a mix of clear mold acrylic. Others we're going to create an additional facade on the 3D prints where we're using leather, using beads and rhinestones.
Leaders are very skilled at what they do. They know which beads to use, what combinations to use, and so on. We had an aesthetic that we were seeking to achieve, and they, through their exceptional craftsmanship, were able to help us deliver that in the most beautiful and eloquent way.
Traditional and contemporary design techniques have really been a big emphasis in the work on this project. In particular, we've used modern technology of 3D printing after 3D modeling to produce the forms of some of the masks. Those masks will then, the 3D prints will then be taken to create a mold, which we will then use traditional technology of bronze and brass casting to create the finished pieces. These works are being done in the very old, very celebrated Bronze Casting Guild in the Benin Kingdom.
We travel to Benin City, which is, you know,
So Tosin, can we,
Yeah.
leading city.
how long is the video?
It's going on a bit more, so maybe we'll stop now
Yeah.
and I'll just finish the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, please.
Another 7 minutes. So the idea of this really is about the opportunities that exist within design to produce works that are, let me just get back into what else I wanted to show you. To produce works that are not just about architecture, but are about design as well. What I wanted to just quickly share is the output of that work and how it has been manifested. Again, just using skills that I have learned in as a designer in school. The masks that were produced, we have a series of 6, but you know, they're quite architectural. It's traveled now to Nevada, where they've just been recently photographed. There will also be taken to Kazakhstan, and then we're also expecting them to be in South Africa as well. But this all comes from a breadth of knowledge of understanding materiality, tectonics, and being able to take the principles that are used within architectural design and changing of scale to something that is more human-centered. Now, just to finish the presentation, I would just like to come back to, I guess, also how we met, which was online. I've been very active on social media, and I think it's really important to let people see the scale and scope of what we do as designers and how we can tie all these different disciplines together. Very hands-on in terms of materiality and execution of projects on site. You know, we do a lot of prototyping. As you would imagine, being from Nigeria, there are a lot of things that the minute you're bringing them into the country, they're so expensive. So we do a lot of execution by actually building elements from scratch, which is taking you really back to what would have been done in the 1930, I guess 20s, you know, early Bauhaus movement, where you had to kind of make everything based on very strong design principles. So we do a lot of testing. This is a hot tub area in a project that we finished now, but you know, we didn't, cost-wise, it was going to be too expensive to actually bring in a pre-built hot tub, and so we had to build one from scratch, putting in all the nozzles. But that's what makes it interesting. And just to also raise the point that we have a very strong breadth of knowledge, particularly in the genre of doing beach houses in Nigeria, where we're actually doing number 9 at the moment, but always learning from the local materials. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, these are all using a material that is available quite widely locally, called like a willow reed. It's almost like a bamboo. It grows about 8 meters long, and it has no joints or marker points in between. So it lends itself quite appropriately for cladding. And then even the columns using materials that are used we call it in Nigeria ram rope. It's used for tying goats and cows, but it has really beautiful materiality when you use it on columns of buildings. So that's really it. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Tosin. That was wonderful. So much to learn from the materiality which you've just shared with us, the video and all your knowledge that you've acquired and you translate into your projects. Thank you so much. And I'm sure all the audience has enjoyed your work.
Yeah, very much, very much. Very excellent work displayed. Very nice.
Thank you.
So we have on board another young and shining architect, I would say, from Delhi. We have with us today architect Gurpreet Singh Shah, whose amazing architectural pursuits are best described as sculpted architecture, as what I say, that fits perfectly well into the concept of today's discussion of art as form in architecture. So architect Gurpreet Singh Shah is an architect, planner, and infrastructure expert with an experience of local and international architecture and urban design for more than a decade. He's a gold medalist from Columbia University in urban design. He's currently the principal architect at Creative Group, New Delhi. Under his leadership, Creative Group has won several notable national and international design competitions, like of India's modern airports in Chennai, Goa, Raipur, Vadodara, and also Times Square Mall, large campuses such as IIM Ranchi, and prominent railway stations like Charbagh, Kota, and Nya Raipur. He recently spearheaded the execution of Kartarpur Land Port Terminal at Dera Baba Nanak in a record time of 4 months, inaugurated by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi in November 2019. So we would like, Mr. Gurpreet, we would like you to share your concepts and creations. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present some of my work. Can you see my screen, please? Can everyone see my screen?
I can.
Okay, fine. That's great.
Yeah, we can see. We can see. We can see.
So, talking about art and architecture, this is a great marriage in terms of how art has always evolved architecture. And I would like to share one of my favorite images of Hawa Mahal. This is a historic building in Jaipur where architecture, art, and science has been culminated together. So we see these jalis where the Venturi effect has been used so very subtly, and the hot air becomes cold when it goes inside. And at the same time, this idea of repeating jalis and Rajasthani architecture in terms of window elements creates a very, very interesting facade. So looking at that, one of these very inspiring photographs, we looked at how a commercial building can be thought of. and a project in Raipur, a place where temperature is hot and it goes beyond 40 degrees quite often. We thought that maybe how Jali can create an interesting facade which changes with time, and at the same time how this idea of making buildings sustainable is possible in a commercial building. So we looked at how in Jaisalmer, if any one of us has gone in middle of the day, we always see there is this idea of mutual shading, and even at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one feels comfortable just because there is a shade in the corridors, in the narrow corridors. So the idea of mutual shading was thought of, and then there is this very interesting idea of how dupatta or a shading device that we use, people just covering, these ladies just covering their heads by a cloth, and that is acting as a shading device for us. And on the other side, you see this jalis from the, I showed you first image, that was the exterior, and now this is the interior, and you see that the jali is creating venturi effect, and the jali is also creating a wonderful daylight where you see so much of interesting patterns being created inside. So, there are different ways of looking at sustainability, and these are one of them. And then this idea of step terraces, how one can utilize knot terraces in the building. So we looked at all these elements, and when we were doing a SWOT analysis for one of our buildings in this mall, we thought how these knot terraces can become extended commercial areas, and these can be probably terraces where the restaurant owners can further lease out and create outdoor open spaces, and which can be commercially utilized and give revenue to the owners. And at the same time, taking the idea of the not mutual shading a little forward, we created the terraces on the north, and we rose the building towards the west, so that from the west, the atrium or the courtyard in the center of the building gets shaded. So, thereby optimizing these spaces and reducing the electrical bill of the owner. So by using these passive architecture design strategies, we were able to make this public space of the building non-air conditioned, but at the same time we were able to achieve a comfort condition of almost 26 to 28 degrees at most of the time of the year. So this was a great way of reducing our heat loads inside the building. During the construction, you see that we use idea of the jali in two ways. One is the external jali, where the jali was used as an element of art. And then you see the smaller jali, the jali which was inside the atrium, which acted as the venturi effect. So, in the venturi effect, what happens is you create a natural draft inside the building, and the wind then gushes inside, thereby taking the hot wind up, and then from the atrium skylight we are able to open those punchers and take the wind out. So these simple strategies were very useful in making the building sustainable and at the same time having a wow factor for the building. And that's how you see the artistic impression was created, and this is how we were able to achieve it. Now the jalis also give you an opportunity to put hoardings which can be commercially utilized. This is the daylight photograph. The atriums give us a chance to make the full project totally daylit. Similarly, another example where art was thought of in a very different way, and a Kartarpur project was a project where the challenge was to complete a 22,000 square meters of a terminal building, 30 meters high, in a time frame of 4 months. This was never been attempted so far in the country. So the idea of how to achieve such kind of a project in such a short time frame was very, very interesting and a challenge for all of us. So here we came up with the idea, we utilize steel as a material, where steel gave us a chance to use its malleability to create the building as a piece of art, and we could make all the trusses which could be different from each other, and at the same time use the culture and the heritage of Punjab to showcase the rich flavor of the state through the local artwork by utilizing the skill set of the artisans and the sculpturists. So there was a very interesting amalgamation of how these things should happen. But at the same time, this was a big challenge for us, since this was something that the religious community of Sikhs always demanded, that we should have a way of going to Pakistan and visit our sacred Gurdwara there. So when that opportunity came to us, we wanted that the symbol of transition between India and Pakistan should have some symbol of this religion, and we utilized the pure symbol of Kirpan and the Khanda to showcase the flavor of Punjab. So that's how the site plan was visualized. So the terminal expresses the purity of the religion, and at the same time we have the petals at the foreground, which kind of showcases the culture and the artwork to represent iconicness of the building. In terms of the processes, this was a very, very interesting project. We had this intent from the client to create a project where 5,000 immigration processes can happen in 1 hour. So for that, if you do a level of service calculation, you would have a terminal building 50,000 square meters. But we didn't have the time to create such a huge building. So we came up with this idea of a dual floor plate, where the building processes changed with time, and thereby by creating a very, very interesting planning principle, we were able to reduce the building floor plate by 50% to 22,000 square meters. So I think creating less is also sustainable. So that is something that we were able to achieve here. And in the end, in 4 months' time, having created a building with use of steel and giving it a cultural landscape, where we utilize the symbols of Sikhs like Ikyonkar, and showcase the journey of their saint Guru Baba Nanak. Through artwork inside the building, we were able to create a building which had a soul inside it. So this is the interior. And in the interiors, you see that just by giving this artwork and this whole language of the journey of the Guru, we were able to have a more human building rather than just a piece of glass and steel. And this is something that was really liked by the people who are visiting this, and they are getting more knowledge also in terms of what is the philosophy of the Sikhs, what is the transition between India and Pakistan that has to be perceived. So the storyboards were deciphered in the landscape. So now if any one of you would visit, these were not erected then, but these are present now.
गौरव आप जरा म्यूट हो जाओगे. गौरव आप म्यूट हो जाओ प्लीज. आपका म्यूट नहीं है गौरव.
Similarly, I would, before moving out to the next project, I would like to showcase a small animation to express the design intent of Kartarpur. Can you see the animation, please?
Yes.
जब हमारे हिंदुस्तान में पाकिस्तान की सांसें बहुत भारी कीमत चुकानी पड़ी और वो कीमत थी बर्फबारी। देश को दो टुकड़ों में बांट दिया गया, हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान। पर अभी भी एक कड़ी थी जो दोनों मुल्क के लोगों के
Can we have the audio, please?
Mr. Gurpreet, we can't hear the video. You have to unmute.
Can you hear now?
Now we can hear.
Do you want me to replay this? So this project was so challenging that almost 2,000 tons of steel was erected and fabricated from different parts of the country. And the challenge was that none of the trusses are alike. So, every point, everything was so very different that it required a lot of precision. So, a lot of off-site activities had to be taken place so that the whole thing comes together. And the challenge was that, just 25 days before the day of inauguration, we had just been able to complete the foundations. So, there was a call from the ministry that, should we do an inauguration just by a button of through a computer screen and just showcase a part of it. But we took that as a challenge and we convinced them that we will complete the project. And it was such a big surprise that the project was done with the use of more than 95 cranes. And there was no spot in those 25 days that you can stand at one point and be still for 15 seconds, because there would be a crane that would be moving. So it was such a tedious task that it was very, very challenging for all of us, but somehow we were able to do it. And I believe this was Guru's magic that we were able to achieve this kind of a project. I would come back to the presentation. Can you see my screen, please?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So, looking at the second project, I would just like to take you to another very, very interesting project. And here, I think the art has been used in a very, very different way. And there was this project where we got an opportunity to design a clubhouse. So the client had the brief that, can you design something in a project where there are 50,000 units in terms of housing, and housing sometimes, tends to be boring. So they wanted that in the clubhouse, can there be a, wow factor, or can there be a dramatic change or something interesting for the users? So that was a brief, that's it. So we thought that, how a clubhouse can be different, and how you can create something which is, which is so real, which is not real at all. So we thought of the forest of Chhattisgarh, and this was a project in Raipur. And we thought about the waterfalls. We thought about how a tree house or, or something very organic can probably come together. And by that, we scribbled and we thought, and we had to create a very small, building of almost just 5,000 square meters. So the intent was to create something where, there can be a level of fascination, where you can, think about something, just as a cloud, and the shape kind of changes from all the directions. So we came up with this idea of a clubhouse where we thought of a form where, it was very organic, and it was, you can't touch any corner in that form. So we came up with this idea of something very interesting, and to realize that was a big challenge. So how do you create a sculpturistic form? A project where the height is almost 15 meters. So the client decided that you want to do something like this, but how to do it? So we thought that let's create a scale down model of the building, and we created a small scale model of 1:5, where the whole building was recreated in a small patch of 1:5 scale, almost 30 meters by 15 meters model was created to understand how this level of complexity can be realized. So once we got the idea of how this can be done, then we started to actually create this building on ground. And now as we speak, this building is being created, and we are almost 70% done in terms of the look and feel, and the interiors are going on. So maybe by the next presentation, I'll be able to show you the actuals. So this is a way of the architecture can itself be a piece of art. And then there was another very, very interesting project, and I'll end with this project, where the client's brief was to create a tower in Gurgaon, 120 meters tower. But in today's context, creating a tower, you have to be very cost sensitive. So the client's brief was, can you create an interesting tower which is cost effective? Can you create a tower where the use of technology, the use of glass is limited? so that we can create something which is sustainable, cost effective, but still it has some kind of a play to it. So we thought of some forms where, you know, there is always some kind of a play or emotion. So we thought about these, you know, ballet dancers, and you know, the ballet dancers always look so very energetic and so very, every time they are in motion. So we thought about a form which can dangle in that respect, and how that can come together was a challenge that we thought to perceive. And we thought of, you know, different postures of a human body, and probably we correlated that with the building structure. And then we started to chamfer the corners, and so that we have something which is very similar to, you know, dancing bodies of a lady. By that we came up with this idea of a tower which was a little bit dynamic, and we started to use the lower floors for commercial development and step terraces, similar to what we did in Times Square for North, which was stepping towards the north. And the tower had an element of GFRC Jali, which kind of wraps around, and that's where the play or the dance starts to happen. But one has to be very sensitive when you are creating a tower, that the core has to be very rigid. You know, if the core becomes unstable, then the building can be unstable. So, you know, this whole change of form only happens at the periphery, but it perceives that the whole tower is changing. So it was another way of creating a building which has a play of art to it. And that's how the commercial plaza is on the lower 3 floors before the tower rises. The entrance to the tower. So these are some of the projects that I thought would be interesting to showcase, which represents art and architecture in different ways, and they are very different from each other. I thank everyone for patiently listening to me, and that's it from me. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gurpreet. It was a wonderful presentation and very apt, as I said, that sculpted architecture of yours. So I just have a question for you, since you mentioned in your clubhouse about the scale. So do you think the scale of the project gives a flexibility to the creation of art?
I think the intent of the client and the architect, you know, if you create a building where you create a wow factor which hits your heart and it connects with your client and the audience at large, that's where the art and architecture can blossom. And this clubhouse was a very I think apt example, where when we created this piece of art and architecture, the client was able to sell his housing by showcasing this clubhouse to the masses. And, you know, he was thinking that maybe he will build it or he might not build it. But once he realized that, you know, the wow factor the building has created, you know, he said that we need to build it and we will make sure that, you know, we make this building. But then the challenge of how to make it is something I think is much simpler. But the main idea is to convince someone to actually go for these kind of dynamic buildings.
Sure. So thank you very much. And to the audience as well, if anyone has questions, please, you can send in just now so that we can forward it to the panelists. Any questions? I think there's one question from Ms. Sikta Singh that why Vadodara Airport has no sense of Gujarat's culture.
You know,
if I can, you know, probably get in, Vadodara and the second wave of airport design was designed. These were international design competitions where the idea and the brief from the client was to create global facilities. So that was the intent from the Airports Authority of India, to create buildings which can be increased and decreased in size quickly, A, and B, The idea of artwork at that point of time was to integrate artwork as a second layer in those kind of buildings. But now, as she has rightly pointed out, people and architects, even general public at large, are looking at art and architecture to come together, rather than being individualistic.
Yeah, true. I agree with that, and that's where that belongingness comes in, where the participants, the users feel a kind of connect with the architecture they are using, the
Right,
buildings.
because in 2005, when these first wave of terminal buildings were happening in India, at that point of time, it was not about art. It was about actually having global facilities. So that's where we were going at. But once those global facilities, the buildings of glass and steel happened, and we were able to achieve technological advancement in these buildings, and then that is the time that we realize that art and culture is very, very paramount in these kind of public spaces, and they should be given due importance.
Sure. As you've shown in that Kartarpur corridor, it's really apt because it actually initiates that essence of your travel. So the moment you enter there, so it kind of brings you to conclusion to where you are going.
I think Kartarpur was only possible because we had this experience of creating structures and structures, big structures in steel. So we were able to get the technology in steel together, and we had realized at that point of time that global facilities are important, but they do not provide the soul in the building. And that's where integration of these global facilities require artwork in the building form itself. And that's why in Kartarpur, we created spaces where artwork can be brought as a second layer, but it would act as the first layer in terms of visual inspection. And even when you enter, you see the lotus typology that we have created showcases the technology, but at the same time it showcases the culture, the khanda of Sikhism, which is much broader idea rather than a very, very small piece of sculpture here and there.
True. I think that is makes a statement. So anyone else for questions from the audience? Any more questions? So I think the response we are getting is that very nice presentation from everyone. I think the whole audience has enjoyed. Prabjot, do you have any question? Prabjot, do you have any question? So I think we'll conclude this discussion, and it was wonderful having seen architecture and viewpoints from 2 countries across 2 continents, and I'm sure the audience must have liked it as well. And we'll definitely continue on this in a different format. And thank you all the audience and the panelists, Professor Shah, Mr. Gurpreet, and Tosin. Thank you very much for participating. We had a few roadblocks in the beginning, but all is well that ends well. So see you in the next webinar. We'll plan something to have all of you on board again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deepika. Thank you so much, Deepika. Thank you, Gurpreet. Thank you, Professor Shah. It was very, very informative and very, very useful. काश बच्चे सारे ज्वाइन कर सकते, कर नहीं पाए. I would like कि recording मिल होवे ते बच्चे देख सकन.
Recording आपको Friday को मिल जाएगा mail में. I'll be sending that link.
Because students will be, क्योंकि साडी तो उम्र निकल गई काफी, बच्चों ਨੂੰ ਹੀ बहुत फायदा हो सकता है हो जा काम देख के.
It was wonderful. So uska link, I'll be
simply wow.
So thank you for joining, and I hope all of you will look forward to our next webinar very soon on a different subject. And thank you, Professor Shah. And thank you, Mr. Patel, for being there with us throughout and tolerating and bearing with us the initial roadblock.
Tolerating, not tolerating, it was very, very useful and very wonderful presentations. All the three presentations were very, very informative.
Thank you. So we'll definitely plan something else now in the next few weeks, and let's inform everyone about that. Thank you. So with this, I think I'll end the meeting and put on the recording on YouTube and send a link in our newsletter. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.